Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back. We're going to begin reading letter 6 in Jesus Christ, the Christ letters, the truth. And letter 6 is a continuation of letter 5, although letter 6 is less scientific in the processes or the true processes of creation when comparing it to what we have been taught to believe from the religious and scientific aspect. We're going to be talking about it more on a spiritual level, as well as what we started to talk about at the end of letter 5, which was the ego, as we as human beings have termed it, why it's so important for us, and why simultaneously it is the reason for all human suffering. These letters present knowledge which people down the ages have longed to know but have not yet received, since their worldly scientific knowledge was not sufficient to enable them to understand. So was it when I was in Palestine in the person of Jesus. Again and again, I explained the truth of universal existence in various ways, but no one understood. As most of you must realize, I have not come to you at this time to bring you a new religion, a better moral code, or a new God to worship. Nor, like your metaphysicians, do I preach positive thinking. Your humanly conceived positive thinking, magnetizing to yourselves your human needs and desires, and the means to fulfill your ambitions, only strengthens your ego drive. All things blessed and bountiful will be manifested in you and your life as and when you realize that the entire universe is transcendent universal consciousness made visible when it takes on material form through the activity of the ego. Your true purpose in your spiritual journey is to break free of the bondage of the ego and make ever more pure contact with divine consciousness. It is your eventual destiny to recognize its omnipresence both within yourself and throughout your daily activities. Your highest spiritual goal is to come to that spiritually exalted moment when you finally realize that your human mind and its desires are only finite and therefore can never bring you the happiness and fulfillment you will experience when you lay down your selfhood and come to divine consciousness, asking only for the higher way, more abundant life, and the true spiritual purpose, which you alone can accomplish in your earthly state. However, to help you reach this high point of realization, I'm about to enlarge on the origins and functions of the ego. As I contemplate your world, I see a dimension presently controlled by ego force. Every evil thing in your present decadent society, in your vast soulless cities, arises out of ego force. It is the source of every wicked, lying, perverted activity presently in operation on your planet. It controls the media, your TV, your families, nations. It is productive of wars all over your globe. It creates a foul miasma of low consciousness energies, perceivable by higher spiritual entities, but too horrible to contemplate. If your present consciousness is permeated with love of possessions and an inability to share with others, devising ways and means to become rich at the expense of others, stealing, failing to perform your work conscientiously, or give good value for money, snapping, snarling, indulging in criticism, sarcasm, judgmentalism, rejection, denigration, enmity, intolerance, hatred, jealousy, aggression, violent impulses, thieving, falsehoods, double and devious dealings, slander, you are ego-driven. Your ego is in control, and you will find it difficult to move through the miasma of ego consciousness to be able to see reality. For this reason, I have come through the medium of these letters to help you understand exactly what is binding you down in your present conditions, the horror of which was unimaginable by the human mind a century ago. I am now about to explain more fully the ego. At the time of your conception, during intercourse, as your father's consciousness rose via his spine, ever higher to the top of his head, and tension mounted towards its climax, your father's consciousness briefly touched divine consciousness, creating a flashpoint, a small explosion, which he experienced as orgasm. And therefore, an injection of divine consciousness was infused in his semen to give life to the mother's ovum. The moment of union with woman and explosion of tension in a man at the time of orgasm reenacts the time of the Big Bang, when the unity of father-mother consciousness exploded into separate energies, and the first electrical particles and random matter took form. Father consciousness provided the energy of activity and momentum, and mother consciousness provided the bonding to give form and substance to the electrical particles. These are primal impulses which give life and form to man and woman. I want you to understand that creation is not a creation of matter imbued with consciousness. Creation is the visible form of primal impulses, drawn and bonded into individual shapes and entities, all expressing different facets and combinations of the primal impulses in a myriad of ways. Therefore, the primal impulses are the reality which your eyes, ears, smell, tell you are solid matter, but are really consciousness impulses individualized in order to be experienced, intellectually understood, and appreciated emotionally. At the time of conception, when semen unites with ovum and a mating takes place, male consciousness chromosomes bond with female consciousness chromosomes. This is a physical union of your father's own consciousness of semen and mother's own consciousness of ovum, powered by the divine. Thus do the male and female consciousness chromosomes carry the imprint of genetic DNA from both parents. The moment of physical union of semen and ovum is conducted on two levels of creativity. The injection of divine consciousness became your soul embodied within the human consciousness union of semen and ovum. Physicality was created powered by father-mother life consciousness, which controlled the activity and bonding of conscious cells, producing the gradual growth and development of your physical body, which is really consciousness made visible on every level of your being and nothing else. Your soul remained as an inviolate flame, which is a metaphor of father-mother life, deeply enmeshed within the physical drives of activity-bonding/repulsion. These became your earthly individuality and personality. And this is what we call the ego, the bonding/repulsion. Incorporated within the transcendent life impulses of divine mother consciousness, father-mother consciousness, these consciousness impulses now took over the process of your physical consciousness, creation, and became the driving force behind your personality. Together, activity-bonding labored to build conscious cell by conscious cell, according to the consciousness specifications contained in the consciousness DNA molecules. Both personality and body are the product of these human impulses of activity-bonding/repulsion. Whilst universal consciousness remains forever within equilibrium in this space, and therefore undetectable, in that self-same space, in frequencies of vibration, the primal impulses of activity-bonding/rejection work together in the visible dimension appearing to your senses in the form of electromagnetism. Both universal consciousness and your soul remain undisturbed within the silence and stillness of equilibrium in space. The earthly consciousness creativity takes place within space and time and varying frequencies of vibration of materialized consciousness. Therefore, you take on living form and continue to exist within two dimensions. One dimension is unseen, the divine consciousness, and the other visible dimension is all that the living human being can sense or comprehend, until spiritual development lifts its human consciousness frequencies of vibration to the spiritual plane, and a glimmer of understanding enters into earthly consciousness. As this process of gradual enlightenment proceeds, the upliftment human consciousness then works consciously both within the unseen and the visible dimension. The higher the frequencies of vibration of individualized consciousness, the higher and more perfect are the forms created in the mind. The lower the frequencies of vibration, the more divorced from universal perfection of love are the forms created in the individualized mind, wholly possessed by the ego drive. The ego takes over control of your developing fetus from the time of the union of the semen and ovum. The new little being became an I, immediately feeling satisfaction and dissatisfaction in the womb, depending on its sense of comfort or discomfort and what was happening to mother. When you were born, your instincts of survival, imprinted with the deep primeval knowledge of created beingness buried in each living cell of your body, prompted you to breathe and become aware of an emotional emptiness and deprivation at your separation from the comfort of the confining womb, which was then felt as a physical emptiness and need for physical nourishment. Thus was your ego cry born. When you cried, you were given nourishment by mother, which was deeply satisfying, both physically and emotionally. When your needs were fully met, you could slip back into a state of equilibrium with sleep. When you woke from your equilibrium, you felt a sense of insecurity. The equilibrium now divided into mental and emotional awareness. You remembered that mother and milk created a fulfillment of needy insecurity, and so again you cried. Your needs were fulfilled. So did your ego drive develop. Sometimes you cried and it was humanly decreed that it was not yet feeding time and you were left to cry for a while. This built up an awareness that needs were not always satisfied immediately and you would have to adapt. You either chose anger and cried more vigorously or lapsed into acceptance. Your choice of reaction depended on the characteristics of ego drive imprinted in your consciousness at birth. Neither forms of ego drive were to be condemned or judged. They were the natural result of the creative factor of ego, which ensures individuality. As I explained in my last letter, ego is the guardian of individuality. If you did not have this inbuilt impulse to cry for what you want to make you happy or reject what makes you sad, you would be in a limbo of nothingness. If you did not run when faced with danger or did not call for help when in danger, you might die. If you had not cried, demanded food when you were born, you might have starved. If you had not welcomed mother's milk and nuzzled her warmly, you might never have developed a close, caring bond with her. Without the ego drive, there would be no creation, no individuality, no fulfillment of need, no protection, no warmth of response, and no human love. Without the ego drive, there would be no self-defense, no self-protection, no survival. However, the ego drive, primarily the I of the individual, is imprinted only with the need for self-satisfaction and survival. In childhood, the I of the ego is governed by likes and dislikes, wants and rejection of what is not wanted, and by habits formed by a constant repetition of feelings. Bad habits in the form of unacceptable ego responses to personal experiences and the environment are formed, and these are in turn imprinted in the unconscious or subconscious mind and remain hidden. However, they erupt into repeated behavior patterns when the memory of previous circumstances and modes of behavior unconsciously bring them to mind. Now, the subconscious mind and the conscious mind begin to work together to develop the personality. Much of the behavior becomes conditioned behavior and very difficult to break. When the person is unconsciously programmed with strong self-centered ego habits of thought and behavior and finds it difficult to live with others in harmony, that person then goes to a psychologist for help in unraveling the complexities of the mental/emotional problems. Until my truth of existence is fully understood and the life-giving principles become the consistent guidelines of habits of thought and responses to life's experiences, the pain and suffering arising from the ignorant indulgence of the ego drives will persist. The Church describes this human difficulty as being a temptation by Satan. It is no such thing. It is a natural process brought about by the uncontrolled reactions to life, powered by the ego drive, whose only purpose is to bring the individual happiness and contentment, fulfillment of need, or privacy, independence, security, peace, all directed at survival. It must be understood that there is nothing evil about the ego drive. It is the necessary tool of creation. It is the individual himself who brings about the imbalances in life by allowing the ego drive full control in his personality without thought or consideration for other people. This too is not to be judged or criticized, since the person possessed by ego drive knows no other way to think or operate within the earthly dimension. The child knows nothing about self-control other than that taught by parents and school teachers. Therefore, the mistakes it makes in responding to life and its ups and downs can only be accepted in good spirit by parents and teachers, since the child has no understanding of what is driving him. If he wants something right away and wonders why he shouldn't have it. There is nothing more in his mind than this. He sees something he likes, he wants it. It is cruel to tell a child roughly, no, you can't have it. His entire system is insulted and assaulted. From earliest babyhood, the training process must be initiated by logic and reassurance, affirming his right to feel secure within his environment. His sense of security should be developed by explaining the right way to express his wishes. Love, not irritation or anger, must choose the words which tell the child why he cannot have what he wants. The child will hear the message when given in love. When delivered in anger, it arouses his deepest ego drives and begins to take form as resentment, overt or hidden, or a sense of deep-seated frustration which taints the ego, reducing the child's natural sense of inner validity. A child needs to possess this sense of personal validity and should not be subdued or destroyed. It requires parents or teachers to point out very clearly that other people in the world also have their needs, their rights to their possessions, their desire for peace and pleasure. No one, not even a child or adult, has the right to upset another person in order to obtain their own satisfaction. If another youngster hits the child and makes the child cry, it is only natural for the ego drive to want to fight back. He is programmed to defend himself against the other child. It calls for parents and teachers to point out that a payback, revenge and conflict only escalates, bringing more pain to each child. And for this reason, payback is entirely pointless. Better to laugh and turn away. And rather than allow the irritation and hurt in the mind to continue, better still to take the problem to divine consciousness in prayer and ask for the hurt to be removed from his consciousness and seek a means of reconciliation. A child should also be taught to take time to understand that he and the other child are equally children born of the divine moment. When a child is spiritually receptive and can make this procedure of recognizing his spiritual kinship with other children and all living things and the rights of others equal with his own into a habit, he will have been given the greatest spiritual gift possible. In such a way is the ego drive weakened by the practical daily application of inspirational love, whilst the central I-ness of the child remains strong and self-confident. The child should be taught the benefits of laughter, which I will describe and explain in a later letter. Therefore, skilled and insightful teaching is absolutely necessary to steer the child into an appreciation of the rights of other people, equal with their own rights. This is the spiritual law which should dominate the home and the classroom. Any other law by which to judge circumstances is faulty and lacking in balance. Okay, we're going to stop there. I know that my videos have been 25 to 35 minutes, so we're going to stop right there. And we will read on about the ego in our next video. And again, we're reading letter 6. Thank you all so very much for joining me as we slowly move through the Christ letters. I love you all very much, and I will see you all again soon. And until I do, take care of yourselves, take care of those around you, and I will see you for our continuation of letter 6. Bye-bye.